Hello, everyone, and welcome to Alta Live. My name is Beth Spotswood. I am Alta's digital editor, and I am so very excited to welcome you all today for a discussion with world-class illustrator Joe Ciardiello. Joe is a regular artistic contributor to Alta Journal, but you have likely seen his work at some point over the past nearly 5 decades. Joe has worked for most major magazines and newspapers, as well as for corporate and advertising clients, book publishers, and record companies. I could list them all, but think a major company and Joe's probably illustrated for them. Among his many awards is the incredibly prestigious Hamilton King Award from the Society of Illustrators. His book, A Fistful of Drawings, was published in 2019. Today, we are going to speak with Joe about his illustrious career, his artistic process, his love of spaghetti westerns, if we're lucky, and I have a lot of questions actually about music today. Before we begin, some housekeeping. Alta Live is the digital interview series we do here at Alta Journal. If you are unfamiliar with Alta, we are an award-winning quarterly magazine focused on California and the West. You can join us as a member for as little as $3 a month and support the work we do, including our monthly California book club. Tomorrow evening, we are welcoming Maggie and the Mechanic comic author Jaime Hernandez. That event is free. It's at 5 o'clock tomorrow. We also do weekly events like this one. If you haven't yet joined Alta as a member, I so hope that you consider it. You check out altaonline.com. You explore our magazine if you see it at your favorite independent bookseller, and really do consider becoming a member. I also want to invite anyone in the Bay Area to join us Friday evening. We are celebrating this desert issue, which features some of Joe's incredible illustrations. He did the Ken Lane article. And we'll talk more about that. We're actually going to see his process on this. But at Bookshop West Portal this Friday evening at 7 p.m., we'll be hosting a free to all reading with some Alta contributors. We'll be passing out some free wine, some free literature. So come on down to Bookshop West Portal Friday at 7 p.m. I hope to see you there. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Please use that to ask questions of our guest, Joe, today, and we'll try and get to those at the end. We're going to chat for about 30 minutes, and this interview will be recorded, posted to altaonline.com later this afternoon, and emailed to you along with a link to Joe's work, invitations to upcoming Alta events, and anything else that pops up today. With that, I welcome our community here today. Please chime in the comments and let us know where you're zooming in from. I am in Novato, California, northern Marin County. Joe, where are you today?
I'm in Mount Pleasant, New Jersey, which is about 3 miles from the Delaware River, as far west, I guess, in New Jersey as you can go.
So are we counting that as the West? You're in Western New Jersey.
Yeah,
so.
This is about as far west as I go. Nowhere near where you are, but. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to kind of dig into your work, but before, and particularly your recent work, hi Florida, hi Ontario, Malibu, welcome everyone. I want to talk a little bit about your early career. In your early days as an illustrator. You originally wanted to be a cartoonist. You ended up attending Parsons, and while still there, you took on some early clients, including, but not limited to, Crawdaddy, a rock and roll magazine, Scholastic, and Penthouse. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your journey from a boy growing up in Staten Island, New York, to Parsons, and becoming kind of a working illustrator at such a young age?
Yeah, well, it was, growing up on Staten Island, it's very kind of an isolated place to grow up. It was great at that time, but being an island, people tended not to leave, and the big city was just a ferry ride away. And I was fortunate enough to get accepted to the High School of Art and Design. And so I made my escape after 9 years of Catholic school. This was like being let out of prison for me. So it was a terrific experience. The school was wonderful. And I met all kinds of people.
Is this like for those that aren't familiar, including myself, is this kind of like the LaGuardia High School, but for art for fine arts, the
Right.
Fame High School, as it were.
Right, the Fame High School and also music and art were sort of our competitor schools, I guess you could say. But
Interesting.
this was strictly art, although many of the students were interested in music, and that's how I got interested in music as well. So yeah, it was terrific. And then I went on from there to Parsons. And as you said, my last year at Parsons, I got my first piece published, a little spot illustration in Crawdaddy magazine. But it was, a foot in the door, which always helped. And just, started going from there.
And how old were you when you got that first paying illustrator gig?
I guess I was 20, maybe.
And you've been a freelance illustrator.
Yeah, I'm an old man now, so yeah, a long time.
This is in the early 70s. That's incredible. Okay, I have to
74,
ask.
yeah.
What did you illustrate for Penthouse magazine?
Oh, well, I had a regular column that I did every month. It was called the Upfront. What was it called? View from the Top. They had this craft paper section in the magazine, it was just a variety of different, short articles, and it really wasn't. They didn't give me the sex stuff to do. So the first thing I did was a portrait of Albert Einstein, and I had a portrait of him in my portfolio, which is what got me the gig, I guess. But it was weird because Penthouse and Scholastic were probably my two biggest clients, first clients. It's like one extreme to the other. Yeah. But both bought a lot of illustrations, so it was a good starting point for me.
Sure. I wanted to take a leap forward in time and kind of talk about some of your recent work. You were kind enough, I'm going to share a screen here, to share with us your process a bit from the Ken Lane's article, An Ode to Desert Oracle, that you were assigned by Alta Journal. And I'm going to just click through to just to show folks how we're going to land where we're going to land. But can you tell me kind of what this process is like? You are a full-time at this level. Our creative director, John Gecky, has explained to me, Joe is a very big deal in the illustrator community. So at this level, you get a phone call or an email from a magazine like Alta or Rolling Stone or whomever you're working for, and you agree to take the job. Then you've got a blank page. What's the process like? Do you get the article in advance? Are you given pictures? Take us from the blank page to the magazine.
Well, in this case, I get an email from John asking, if I'd be interested in this assignment. And he, tells me just very briefly what the subject is. And, once we agree, he sends me the manuscript, which I read over, and then start, I know that it's going to be 3 full-page illustrations. So John is great to work with because he really leaves you alone, and I like to be left alone. You give me the the setup, the theme, what the subject is, and I'll read it. But I like to then kind of come up with what I what I think might work. And so
do you show him along the way as you're kind of moving forward in this? Are you communicating with the client?
No, I'm not. Only when I send when I feel that I've got the sketches, the final sketches done, before I go to final artwork. But in the sketch stage, I'll send him. I think the next slide is the final sketches that I would send him. All of this preliminary stuff is these are, and as you can see, my sketches are pretty tight. This is pretty much what you're going to get. So in the final art. So so there's, you know, there's no surprises. This is pretty much what it's going to be. But prior to that, I'm working out, you know, in my own head, you know, where I might want to go, and you know, what different options. And in the story like this, there were so many visuals to choose from. So I had to kind of narrow it down. I knew I wanted to get some of the animals in there, and of course the Joshua tree is sort of symbolic, and since it's the location for a lot of this, his story and where he lives, I guess, right? So and the Joshua tree is interesting to draw, so I wanted to have that in there. That's in 2 of the drawings. And, you know, because he's a great looking character. So, you know, that was fun to, you know, I knew I wanted to do a portrait of him. And you know, most of my work is portrait related anyway.
When you are working on a portrait like this being the final version, are you working from photographs, and are those provided by your client, or did you? I wouldn't reach out directly with Ken. That's just too many kind of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I just go on Google Images or Yahoo Images and type his name in and see what comes up. There wasn't a ton of stuff, but there was enough for me to work with. I wasn't sure what his current look was. It seemed to change. You know, sometimes his hair was longer, or the beard was shorter or longer. And so I sort of did a combination. And, you know, I kind of hoped that, well, I hope this is sort of what he looks like now, but I wasn't exactly sure. Yeah, I find the reference photos. I mean, that's the next step after, you know, it's really the first step for me is getting reference pictures. Because everything I do is based on drawing from a source. So, you know, I knew I wanted to have the owl in there, and what is it? I can't remember the name of the type.
The coyote?
Ram there. No, in the other piece.
Oh. This is Ken's favorite image from your series. For those that haven't read this article yet, by the way, it is a kind of personal piece by Ken Lane on his Desert Oracle periodical that he created with a radio show and a podcast. He is absolutely a desert character who loves, among other things, UFO stories, alien stories of the desert. And I as you captured here, and of course, this was Ken's favorite image. We interviewed him last week on Alta Live, but you seem to have pulled kind of select elements from the article.
Yeah.
And brought them to life.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, finding what's going to work visually and what I want to draw, you know, and saying that's what I like about working with John, is that I'm given that freedom. So, you know, this was a fun thing to do.
Now, I don't want to get you in trouble with other clients, but vaguely, is that often not the case, that a client is hands off and lets you creatively do your thing? And
yeah, I mean, it really varies, but you know, more often than not, you have a little less freedom than in this case. So sometimes editors are involved and to a greater level, and that can always, you know, it depends. It always depends on the publication or the client, but it could get a little tricky. You know, the more people that have a say, the worse it is for the illustrator, I think. You know,
sure.
I mean, it depends. You know, some people like more direction. I don't, but you know, other people work better with, you know, with more direction from the client. So it really varies.
Have you found in your career that as your career has progressed, that you've done more and more work, that you have more and more of these kind of huge name clients, that you are given more space to kind of roam and do your own thing creatively? Would a younger, less experienced illustrator could a younger, less experienced illustrator expect many more cooks in their kitchen as opposed to someone like you?
Again, I think it varies, because art directors and editors change pretty frequently at publications. So you're not necessarily working with somebody who is familiar with you or, has worked with you ever before. So, you are kind of starting from scratch each time with a new, even if it's a magazine you've worked for before, there's a whole new staff that you're dealing with.
Sure.
So you kind of have to prove yourself, I guess, in a way. Even, I don't know that I necessarily have a track record, but yeah, I've been around a long time, but I'm not sure how much that makes a difference. It might, but I don't know. And and I have to say, I'm grateful for the career I've had, but I've been doing this for so long. I'm not nearly as busy these days as I was. This is.
Do you want to be more busy, or are you scaling down?
Well, I'm staying busy with my own projects, so that's what I want to focus on. So I do still want to continue to work, but I guess I'm a little choosy at times.
Sure.
But the work is, the business has changed a lot too. So the work isn't there like it used to be, especially with magazines.
Why is what I mean, I realize I'm asking you a question about like the print industry, but in terms of as an illustrator, are you saying that magazines aren't necessarily hiring illustrator or periodic whomever isn't necessarily hiring illustrators? It's probably much more expensive, I imagine, than hiring a photographer or getting a AP image.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a number of factors, and advertising budgets are usually down for publications. So if there's less advertising, less pages to fill, and yeah, hiring illustrators, I guess it comes in and out of fashion, I suppose. And I feel kind of I've been working in this style, pen and ink, watercolor. It's a very traditional medium. I draw on paper. I don't work digitally at all. And I think for the most part, many publications want, they prefer digital illustrators that work digitally. There's a certain look that's, I guess, more contemporary maybe. And, I'm kind of an old dinosaur, really, but, I'm fine with that too. It's, I had a good run, and like I said, working on some of my own stuff that I didn't have time to do before. So,
yeah, I want to get back to more of your own stuff. First of all, for our audience who knows every single page of the history of Alta's past 5 years, this Joe did of poet Jim Harrison, and this was for a special pullout section we did on the poetry of Jim Harrison. And so while we talk here, that's what you're looking at. What do you, in terms of, you talk about digital artists and kind of more contemporary look, people seems to be popular these days. What do you think about artificially intelligent AI generated illustrations?
Yeah, well, that's another whole can of worms, I guess. Right now, I don't know that I'm qualified to really talk about it, since I'm sort of, I don't know, I am not technically inclined digitally at all. So, but from what I've read about it and from what I've seen, you know, I'm not a fan. You know, it seems to be going into kind of a scary area where it's infringing on a lot of other artists' work. You know, it can you type. My understanding, you type in a prompt, and you know, within a matter of what seconds, it calls through millions of images and puts something together, and it can, you know, it can take other people's work. Also, seems to me that be less work for illustrators.
Sure.
Just in a practical sense, if it's easy enough for somebody to just sit at a computer and type in a prompt and get exactly what they want, you know, why have to pay the money to hire an illustrator? And that, you know, I don't think that's a good thing at all. So
the humanity and skill of your talent, presumably, but
I know there's a lot of people that are, you know, enjoying it right now. So I don't know. To me, it's not. It seems ominous.
it is a little robots creating art.
Yeah.
What does that say about our society? What is this? Now we've moved on from kind of your work from Alta. We've got a few pieces to share with our audience that you've selected. This was for Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia University magazine. Len Small is the creative director there. Another wonderful art director to work with. The story was about they were celebrating 75 years of seminars at Columbia University. So there was a list of you know, speakers, authors, people in various professions that have given seminars over the years, over those 75 years. I don't like doing a cast of thousands, so we limited it to these 5. And that's Auden in the center, who has just the greatest face to draw.
Why? Why is his face?
Well, I mean, just look at it. You know, it's like it almost draws itself. You know, it's so much character in that face. So I knew I wanted him to be front and center because, you know, it would be a strong central point of interest in the illustration, and I'd have the most fun drawing his face. And then that's to his left is Margaret Mead down in the corner there, and to his right is what's her name, Hannah Arendt, and Kenneth Clark is on the top left, and Philip Johnson, the architect.
Fascinating.
So we limited to those 5.
You love a wrinkly face.
Yeah,
everything I'm working against is really makes it more fun to draw. This is so cool. You meant this is a cover for an album, a CD cover. Yes. And this is new for you. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
I've been doing a series of blues CD covers for Sunset Boulevard Records, and this is the most recent one. In fact, I don't think this has even come out yet, and it's Mississippi Fred McDowell, and the title is Jesus on the Main Line, which was one of his songs. And yeah, I love drawing. I've drawn tons of musicians over the years. I play music myself in bands, and so it's always great fun to have to do a musician.
Now, you mentioned the band, and I know you play the drums. Right. Correct. Is it true that you are in a band made up of all illustrators?
Yes, the Halftones. Now defunct, but
oh no,
yeah,
ran out of ink.
But you know, for about 15 years, with various members in and out, the consistent members were myself and Barry Blitt, who played keyboard. People that know Barry Blitt, Pulitzer Prize winner, New Yorker cover artist. And Michael Sloan played bass, another Pulitzer winner, illustrator.
Wow.
So we were like the core trio, and we had other musicians in and out of the group from time to time. And we mostly played at the Society of Illustrators. For the sketch nights, they would have a model would be posing, and there would be live music.
Is there a connection? Music seems to be a big part of your, I mean, you can do it, folks, you can do a deep dive into the work of Joe Ciardiello, but music seems to be a through line through that. Is there a connection between visual arts, the fine art, and music?
I think there is. I mean, I know a lot of people that are artists and musicians. And like I said, even for, when I started high school is when I really met a lot of other kids that were really into music, and some really good players. I think the arts just, it just does go hand in hand.
What do you listen to?
There are a lot of musicians too, prominent musicians that draw and paint. I mean, Bob Dylan
really?
is an artist, yeah. And, he draws and paints, and he makes these fantastic sculptures.
Who was that?
Bob Dylan.
Oh, sure. So when you're here in your studio in Western New Jersey, when you are working, what are you listening to?
It varies. I listen to a lot of music, usually jazz, or Ennio Morricone music, which I absolutely love. Or I listen to podcasts, as more so in recent years. I find I like hearing people talking while I'm working.
Interesting.
That's there's always something on. So it's either music or a podcast or an interview with somebody.
You do not work in silence.
No.
Okay. Now you mentioned Morricone, and I know you have a love of spaghetti westerns, but your upbringing is very East Coast. What about old westerns do you love so much? What's your connection? Or what inspiration do you seem to pull from the Wild West?
Well, growing up at the time that I grew up, I was born in 1953, so westerns were all over television in the 50s and into the early 60s. I mean, I think there were about 30 westerns on, at one point. And also the movies. My dad and I would go to see Western movies, but it was really the Italian Westerns, which, even Sergio Leone's first Western, A Fistful of Dollars, that made Clint Eastwood a big star. And that was in 1964, but those films didn't come to the United States until 67, which is when I saw them. And that just was, really kind of blew my mind, because it was so different. And it had this, this European Mediterranean quality, operatic and much more cynical and gritty. And those I fell in love with. And, of course, those were filmed in Spain, with actors that were Italian and Spanish and German, and everyone speaking their own language, because it was all dubbed in later. But so.
And it inspired your book, A Fistful of Drawings.
That inspired my book, as well as my grandfather. All four of my grandparents were immigrants from Italy, but my mother's father told me, and this was many years ago, that he saw Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. And so, that was kind of in the back of my mind for many years. And then when I started thinking about that project that turned into that book, that was something that kind of propelled it.
We will include a link to more information and where to buy that book in our email. And there it is.
It's the cover, but unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, the book is sold out.
Oh,
I don't know.
We can't get it.
No, I mean there might be a copy floating around
Sorry,
there,
folks.
but Fantagraphics, they may reprint it at some point. If I ever get another book done, possibly, but we'll see.
Are you working on another book? You mentioned that you were working on
I
your
am,
own project.
yeah. It'll be a music themed book, so there'll be lots of musicians in it.
Any particular? Oh, Steve Moore will not be selling his copy of Fistful of Drawings, folks. So don't go looking there. The music book, is that illustrations of musicians? What?
Yeah. I mean, I've done so many over the years, and I've always wanted to try to, collect them in a book form, but I'm still working out, the details of what kind of form this project will take. But there'll be a lot of the ones I've done, but also a lot of new pieces that I'm working on. So
before we run out of time, I want to dive into some audience questions. Roger Black, the great Roger Black, asks,
wow.
Portrait alikeness. Do clients give you a hard time about your drawing looking like the photos of the subject?
About whether it looks enough like the
well, I think the question is, does it look too much like a photo?
I see.
Does Ken Lane's illustration in Alta look just like the illustrated version of? Are you getting feedback?
I haven't had any problems with if it's about, I don't know if I'm understanding the question completely, but if it's about the portrait looking too close to the reference source, the photographs that I'm working from, I haven't had that issue. I mean, that hasn't come up as an issue for me, but I think that's probably because my work isn't that realistic. And I try to, vary it from, first of all, I try to work from several pictures if I can, not just one. But I think you get in trouble in that area if you're working in a very realistic kind of photorealistic kind of style. Then it can get a little tricky. I haven't had that problem. At least not yet.
I love how many of Alta's contributing illustrators have shown up to this and now are asking questions. Steve Carroll, Steve is in Scotland, does a number of illustrations for Alta as well, asks if you have drawn a self-portrait.
I have, yeah. I've drawn myself a few times. I'm not a big fan of myself.
I was going to say, you did not include it in the drawings I was allowed to share today.
Well,
you don't have enough wrinkles to really enjoy drawing yourself. You got to get to that.
I'm waiting
level.
to get even older than I am to really sink into. I don't keep a mirror out here in the studio. Maybe that's part of the problem.
Louise Farr asks, hold on, I lost that one. What was the trajectory of your how your style developed over time? It's so distinctive, and yet it captures the essence of the person you're drawing without imposing on it. So she's curious how your work has changed over the years.
Wow. How's it changed? I mean, I've been basically kind of following one path pretty much throughout my career. It's funny because when I started out, there was not a lot of need for what I do in terms of portraits. There was very, very little portraits being bought. They either wanted a straight caricature you know, in the classic kind of exaggerated caricature kind of mode, or they wanted something very realistic. But I kind of fell in that in-between gray area. And so I didn't get a lot of work doing portraits for the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years of my career or whatever. But I did a book of jazz musicians that I collaborated on with Patrick Flynn, the designer Patrick Flynn, and a friend of mine, John Cruth, who's a musician and a writer. And he wrote poems of jazz musicians, and I did portraits. And I just did them completely unrestricted, where I just would draw directly with pen without any preliminary sketches or any preliminary pencil or anything, just directly with pen on paper. And they were very kind of expressive, and there was a lot of freedom in that process. And that, you know, that was, I don't know, roughly around 1990. And that really kind of was a big change for me in terms of a boost in my career into doing portraits and getting the kind of work that had previously, you know, doors that had previously been closed for me. That's when I started getting work from, you know, like the New Yorker or Rolling Stone or Esquire or GQ magazine, The Atlantic, and all those kind of, you know, publications. So in a sense that, you know, that was a shift in direction, I guess. Prior to that, I was just kind of doing more conceptual type illustration. It was still, you know, with pen and ink and watercolor, but was more idea-oriented pieces, and they weren't portraits for the most part. And I got very bored doing a lot of that work.
Well, as we dive well over our time with you that you've been so generous to give us today, I have one final question for you. I know that you're working on your own kind of art right now, kicking the editors and the creative directors out of your space for a while and doing your own thing. But if you had a dream assignment, what are you waiting for a creative director to call up and say, you want to draw this? What would that be?
Oh boy. Geez, I don't know. You're throwing me with that one.
Sorry, I didn't give you time to prep on that one.
You know, I don't really know, to be honest with you. You know, I don't want to sound jaded at all. I've been fortunate enough to have kind of achieved a lot of the goals that I had throughout my career, and a big one was working for the New York Times book review. That was something that eluded me for a very long time, and in, I guess, 2007, maybe, when Nicholas Bleckman took over at the book review, he started using me for portraits of authors on a regular basis, and some covers, and again, gave me complete freedom with those. I didn't have to show any preliminaries. So that was like a dream assignment for me, because I got to do the kind of drawing I like to do, and it was in a high profile, you know, publication where people were seeing it. And so that, you know, getting something like that again, you know, somewhere, that would be fun. Or somebody to just pay me to do whatever I wanted to do. Yeah.
That's how you got Joe Ciardiello to illustrate for you. Just let him do whatever he wants. Leave him alone. Let him listen to his jazz, and you will get beautiful artwork. So that's my takeaway from this. So hopefully that is something that Alta will continue to do. It's been so fun, Joe, seeing your art help kind of bring our written words to life in Alta, and not only kind of complement them, but build upon the stories. It's just incredible artwork. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your talent and wisdom.
No, my pleasure, Beth. I thank you so much, and thanks to John.
Well, John, our creative director, John Gecky, is a humongous Joe fan. Folks, before you leave, I do want to invite you. Next week, Alta Live is welcoming author Peter Orner. He will be in conversation with Alta Books editor David L. Yulin. Again, tomorrow, we are so excited to welcome Jaime Hernandez, Maggie the Mechanic, author of comics. This is a super artsy crowd. So join us for that. And again, if you're in San Francisco or the Bay Area on Friday evening, come hang out with me and a number of other Alta contributors and staff to celebrate this issue, which again features award-winning illustrator Joe Ciardiello. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, audience. This was really fun. Take care, all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.